all truck weight is distributed to the truck's wheels. The tire wheel spring axle combination is the truck's sole connection to the earth and must support all that the truck is and all that it carries. How the weight is distributed, what share is carried by the front and what share is supported by the rear, affects the truck's ride, drivability, steering, braking, durability, and even the warranty. Too much rear weight can lift the front wheels off the ground. Too much front weight can make the truck much harder to steer. Too much weight anywhere speeds up the wearing out of truck parts, makes braking less predictable, and usually breaks the law. Cars have the same problems that trucks do and must abide by the same laws of physics. But the fact is that the difference in weight between an empty car and a loaded one is a lot less than the weight difference between an empty truck and a loaded truck. So car weight distribution can be pretty well worked out in advance by the engineers. And while it may soon come to that with trucks, right now it's a good idea to have a basic understanding of weight distribution and what you can do about it. The maximum amount of weight that a given tire, wheel, spring, axle combination can support is called the GAWR, which means the gross axle weight rating. There is a front GAWR and a rear GAWR for every truck. There is also a rating for the maximum total weight the truck can carry. It is called the GVW, which means gross vehicle weight. Maximum gross vehicle weight is the total weight of the truck on the road. It must also include the weight of filled up fuel tanks, the weight of everything you carry, and the weight of everybody who rides inside. In short, GVW means the weight of everything. Usually, a truck rides best when loaded to its maximum GVW. However, you can be loaded to less than maximum GVW and still be overloaded in the front or rear. Generally, the front and rear wheels of a truck are not supposed to support the same amount of weight. An unloaded pickup usually weighs more in front than in back because the engine and cab weigh more than the empty pickup box. But loaded to rated capacity, the majority of the weight may be supported by the rear. However, surprisingly, not all of the load weight added to the pickup box is supported by the rear wheels, because although all load weight must be supported by the truck wheels, the distribution of that weight to the front and the rear depends on where the weight is carried. Suppose that instead of a crate, we have a small iron block weighing exactly 100 pounds. If we set the block on the pickup box floor directly above the rear axle, the rear wheels will support all of it. But if we move the block forward to a point that's 10% of the wheelbase ahead of the rear axle, we'll transfer or distribute some of the block's weight to the front axle. Exactly how will the block's weight be distributed? 10% will be on the front and 90% will be on the rear. If we move the block farther to a point that's 20% of the wheelbase ahead of the rear axle, how will the weight be distributed now? 20% on the front and 80% on the rear. Where the weight is carried determines how much of it must be supported by each wheel. Now, what do you suppose happens if the block keeps on going and gets past the wheels? Whoa! That's better. The block is now 10% of the wheelbase back of the rear axle. What percentage of the block's weight is now being supported by the rear wheels? 90%? 100%? No. More. The rear wheels are now supporting 110% of the block's weight. We have just added 110 pounds to the rear end of the truck. But how can this be? The total weight of the block is only 100 pounds. Where did the extra 10 pounds come from? From here. The seesaw effect of adding weight behind the rear axle lightened the front weight by 10 pounds and transferred that 10 pounds to the rear axle. And the farther out you go, the more weight you add to the rear end. At 30% of the wheelbase back of the rear axle, 130% of the block's weight will be on the rear wheels. It works the same way at the other end too. So what? So this. Suppose that you've left capacity for only 100 pounds more payload in the rear. If you load it here, you'll put less than 100 pounds on the rear axle because some of the weight will be on the front axle. Load it here, and you're still all right. But load it here, and you're overloaded. The weight didn't change, but the distribution did. That problem is common with campers. Everything you load back of the rear wheels adds more weight to the rear wheels than the total weight of the object added. And everything added in between the axles puts added weight on both of the axles. Campers also have another weight distribution problem. Weight distribution from side to side. If the weight is evenly balanced and within the rated capacity, no problem. But put too much on one side, and you do have a problem. While you haven't exceeded your rated capacity on the rear, one side of your vehicle is running light, and the other side may have a tire, wheel, spring, and wheel bearing that's running overloaded. Actually, putting a camper on a pickup is like putting a van body on a truck like this. Both the camper and the truck body have a center of gravity, a CG, built in and identified by the body manufacturer. This CG behaves just like the 100-pound block. If located behind the rear axle, it takes weight off the front and transfers it to the rear. And if carried ahead of the rear axle, it distributes some of the weight of the body and load to the front axle. As a rule of thumb, 60% of most truck van bodies is carried ahead of the rear axle. How much of the body weight does this put on the front axle? Let's figure it out. Suppose I want to put a 14-foot body on a truck with a 167-inch wheelbase. I know that this body will fit because it says so in my GMC data book. To mount this body, I must allow 3 inches of minimum clearance between the cab and body. Without this clearance, you can damage both the cab and body when driving. I need just one more number. I need the CA dimension for this truck. That's also in my data book. And it's 102 inches. CA is the distance from the cab back to the rear axle. I now have everything I need to figure the percentage of body weight that'll be carried by the front axle. I don't even have to know the actual weight of the body or payload to do it. And it only takes 4 steps. First, determine 1/2 the body length in inches. 14 feet times 12 inches is 168 inches. 168 multiplied by half, which is 0.5, is 84. Second, add the body clearance. 84 plus 3 inches clearance is 87. Third, subtract the answer from the CA. 102-inch CA minus 87 equals 15. And fourth, divide the answer by the wheelbase. 15 divided by 167-inch wheelbase is 0.089823. 0.089823 rounded off to the first two digits is 0.09 or 9%. So 9% of the body weight in this example will be supported by the front wheels. If 9% of the body weight will be on the front wheels, how much will be on the rear wheels? All the rest, right? 91%, because 9% from 100% leaves 91%. Now all you need to know is how much the body weighs. Then you can take 9% of that weight and add it to the front weight of the truck, and add the rest to the rear weight of the truck. But haven't we forgotten something? Haven't we forgotten the weight of the payload, the cargo, the contents we expect to carry in the truck body? How do we distribute that weight? In exactly the same way as the body weight. If the body is evenly loaded to whatever depth and regardless of cargo weight, the weight of the payload will usually have the same distribution as the body weight. Sure, there are exceptions, but not when we're talking about basic weight distribution. Okay, let me review. Every truck has a GVW. What's a GVW? Gross vehicle weight is the most a truck can weigh when fully loaded and fully fueled. Every truck has a GAWR in front and another one in the rear. What's a GAWR? The gross axle weight rating is the most weight a truck can carry on a specific tire, wheel, axle, spring combination. And what weight does a truck axle combination carry? Truck weight, including options, people weight and fuel weight, body weight and payload weight. And where do you find these weights? Truck weight, option weight, people weight, and fuel weight you can find in the GMC data book. Body weight and payload weight you have to get from outside sources. But once you have them, you can work the front and rear distribution of them very easily. To calculate the percentage of weight on the front end of a level loaded body and payload, multiply the body length in inches by 0.5. Add the body clearance, subtract the answer from the CA, and divide that answer by the wheelbase. Round off your result to 2 digits, and that's the percentage of body and payload weight on the front axle. Then, if your front and rear weights add up to no more than the truck's front and rear GAWR, and the total of the front and rear weights adds up to no more than the truck's GVW rating, you've got yourself a working truck. Now, wasn't that a lot easier than you thought it was going to be? If it wasn't, I'll be glad to run through it all again. Just punch the projector button. I'm always here.